Hey guys, welcome back to another Viper Strategies video. I'm excited for today's video. I think I may have found something that will change a lot of roulette strategies and how they are played moving forward. Now, it's not a new strategy, but something I think that would add serious power and resiliency to existing strategies you already play. Before I show you the theory, I need to show proof of it. Like I always say, we test on this channel. We test before we invest. That is our number one rule to protect our money. So in this video, we are going to run a stress test, a resiliency test with real spins to track a specific statistic I'll cover at the end of the test to see if this theory actually holds any air. And here's the part that you don't want to miss, because if this works the way I think it will, you'll be able to apply this idea to almost any strategy or system you already play with to reduce the risk and protect your bankroll. So let's just run the test and you can be the judge of this theory. I did make a change to the 6-story corners because I want to create a control test. So the tier levels did change and I'm going to be following it with a martingale progression. I'll explain more on that towards the end and why I chose to do this. Also, the corners are not going to be randomized like the previous test that I ran, but instead having them bet in the same sequence on the same exact corners to really stronghold this strategy so we could hyper analyze the performance at its baseline. So if you haven't seen the previous video, I will have a link down in the description below. So let's just jump into the test. I'll get everything set up and we'll catch up with you at the end of the test run and we will review. Okay, guys, that's going to wrap up the test. It made it just about 2,200 spins before it went through all levels of the progression. I stopped it at that point really because I don't think this is the best version of that specific strategy. I'm really just fishing out specific data, and I will go over that in just a second, but I want to touch on what I'm actually looking for, the theory we're actually testing today. But first, I do want to explain in more detail what exactly we're looking for and to see how we could use this moving forward to leverage and reduce risk with any strategy that you decide to play with. So I do want to go over, I know a lot of you guys do understand what D'Alembert is and how this ladder progression works. But there are many new people to the channel, so I just want to brush on it real quick. So essentially, D'Alembert was originally designed to counter more aggressive progressions like martingale, to slow that progression down and reduce that risk. So essentially what you're doing is you're going to increase your bet by 1 unit after every loss. And then you're going to decrease your bet 1 unit after every win. This really smooths out the progression from peaking too high or dipping too low, so bets don't really explode. So like I said, originally designed for martingale type of play. Typically when people play martingale, they're using that with a 50-50 bet. So this is designed for even like bets around half of the board covered. But the theory and the idea behind this is I want to implement this and try this with more complex strategies with multiple steps. The recovery is going to be slower, but it's going to be slow and steady, and it acts kind of like self-balancing to withstand longer losing streaks. And when it cycles back into profit, you could check out at the proper time. So that being said, I do want to show you a basic progression and a basic simple strategy, because what I'm going to be showing is the difference between using this D'Alembert ladder with a bet progression versus betting steps. So these are two different things. I just want to clarify that with you guys. So I'm going to show you a visual right now on the Roulette app, and I'm going to highlight what the difference is. So what we're going to be using is a simple progression. Again, this is just to show you the difference in a very clear way. So the progression we're going to use is going to go 1, 2, 3. Our strategy we're going to use to show this is going to be a simple 3 double street strategy. So we're going to start at 1 double street as the first bet. If we get a loss, we're going to go to the next double street. And if we get another loss, we're going to the third double street. And then I'll explain first the betting progression, and then I'm going to show the difference using betting steps with D'Alembert. So let's go ahead and pull that up next, and I'll explain that out. And then after that, we will go over the test results, because I got some surprising results to share with you. I think that would work really well on helping us refine this to be as near indestructible as a strategy possibly can be. All right, so now that we're in the simulator app, I'm going to show first the betting progression with D'Alembert. So if you're going to use D'Alembert with the actual betting progression, right, if you have that following martingale, Fibonacci, or in this case, I did a very simple one, just doing a 1, 2, 3. First bet, you put $1 on a double street, right? If you lose, you're going to put another double street down, but following that betting progression, you then add another unit to each. So now we're not only do we have another double street, but now we're at 2 units each. Okay, so if we get another loss at this point, we're going to add another double street, and now they go up to 3 units each. Now, if we get a win here, what we're going to do is we're going to then follow that D'Alembert by simply going back 1 unit. And then if we get another win, same thing. Since we're following D'Alembert with the betting progression and we get another win, we're going to drop back 1 more unit. But we are holding our bets here until whether that be near session profit or at session profit. Then you reset back to base, covering one double street. So now I'm going to show you how you can use this with the betting steps on any strategy that you decide to play with. So if we are going to follow D'Alembert with betting steps, what we're going to do is, let's do an example. First bet goes down 1 unit on one double street. We get a loss. We add another bet on another double street, and then these follow and increase with the betting progression, right? Once we get another loss, we're going to go ahead and it's following just like the previous, and these all go up to 3 units each. Now, let's say we are at this level and we get a win. Here's the difference. So we get a win. What we're going to do is we're going to take off 1 bet, right? Because that was our 3rd step. So now we're going to go back in the steps, which means that these 2 double streets now drop down to 2. And let's say we get another win. Same thing. We're going to go ahead and peel back 1. And then since we are back to our base level bet, we peel back this betting progression back to 1. And then that cycle continues up and down. Okay, so I just wanted to go over that real quick just to show you the main difference between using D'Alembert with a betting progression versus using it with betting steps. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the testing results. Okay, so finally into the testing results. And we have some crazy numbers to go over, something I suspected would happen. But of course, we always have to test out these theories. And that's what makes this software a great tool to leverage and use the built-in Viper simulator to run real spins. Now, Kentuck White just recently commented on one of my videos, and he's working on a variation similar to this, and he was saying the same thing. It never really gets out of the 2nd level. So while that test was running, I went ahead and tracked each level and how many times that the progression entered that level. So going over the results, that spin count total, where it went through all levels of the progressions, which is a total of 30, it finally busted at 2,197 spins. And that's a bust on the progressions. We still had Bankroll to work with, but the reason I stopped there is because I'm tracking something different. So the profit high through that session was $931. The max down draw, the amount of Bankroll we used during that session, was minus $579. Now let's talk about really what's most important about this, and why I wanted to run this test is because I want to see how often it goes to that next level. Or in this case, we're calling them stories, or you can refer them as tiers. So let's start at tier 6. This is our max level. So once we get to that 6th tier, the bets per corner are now up to $32. And it only touched that story or tier level 2 times. The first time it went to that level, that's what caused us to go down and use a lot of Bankroll. Now keep that in mind, because I'm going to touch on this in just a second and give you the real reason why I'm doing this. So first time that it got to that $32 per bet level at tier 6, that's when it went into the lowest, using $579 of Bankroll. The second time that it touched that level, it ended up busting. Now let's look at story or tier level 5. This is a $16 corner bet, and we only went to that level 5 times out of over 2,000 spins. Going to tier 4, that's an $8 per corner bet. We only went there 8 times. And then tier 3, we only went there 20 times out of that over 2,000 spins that we ran on this test. I did not expect these numbers. You know, Kentuck White brought it up. He said, hey, I rarely see this get out of the 2nd level. So going back and looking at that test run, you would see the majority of it teetering up and down between tier 1 and tier 2. So if you condense that down, out of those 2,197 spins, gaining profit slowly but steady 98.4% of the time. So between the rest of the tiers, do we need them? This is telling me not, because between the rest of the tier levels, we only touch those levels a total of 35 times. So I always bring it up. We test before we invest. And this is the reason why we need to understand the behavior to then refine these strategies to work in the most optimized way as possible. So now that we have this information, what is this telling me exactly? This is telling me that the majority of the time you're going to be between those first two tiers. So I can either bump up my unit size to make more profit quicker and or drop the remaining tiers. If you want to keep a safety net, that third tier did hit 20 times. And it's still a very, very small percent of the time that it hits. But if you want a safety net, you can keep that one in, but the rest of them are unnecessary because you can see it rarely gets to that point. This does a couple different things. This will prevent you from chasing that session high and also reducing the risk by reducing high bet amounts, which in turn really reduces our stress, right? Once you get to that higher tier level, bets are higher, stakes are greater, it becomes more stressful. So this also leads me to the last point I want to make about this, and it's something most people play by default, and that's to chase that profit high. By human nature, we are programmed to get back what we lost. I'm guilty of that myself, but the point I want to make is if you take out that habit of needing to get that money back before you reset the progression, it's going to avoid bigger losses. So let's say hypothetically, I decide to just keep it at 2 tiers. So we're only going to go a total of 10 progressions because there are 5 levels per tier. And let's say we're on tier 2 at our last bet on that 6th corner and lose. Yeah, you're going to have a temporary loss. But what else it's going to do, knowing that the stats that it floats back and forth between those first 2 levels, the odds say that you will recoup that temporary loss. And the way I see it, that's a pretty high odds that are in your favor. I really believe that this would work great with so many different strategies. I always bring it up. Progression is power. But now playing it either following the betting progression or the step progression may be worth more time doing some tests on some different type of strategies. They don't necessarily need to be 50-50 bets. So that's going to wrap up today's video. And of course, guys, till next time, be cool, stay cool, peace.